People tend to have a love-hate relationship with Florida, and one of the biggest complaints that I hear about from people who don't want to live there is the risk of hurricanes and how that could affect their lives. I lived in Florida for over 10 years, and during my time there, I experienced dozens of hurricanes. And so for today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the practical tips and experiences that I had dealing with hurricanes, so hopefully you're not as afraid to go move and live in Florida. Unfortunately, if you don't like 95-degree weather and 100% humidity, I can't help you with that one. Hurricane season spans from June 1st all the way up to November 30th, with the majority of the storms usually happening kind of in that middle period of late summer, early fall. Before we get started, please hit the like and subscribe button if you want to hear more about hurricanes or other natural disaster preparedness tips. You've probably heard the terms tropical storm, category 1, 3, 5 hurricanes. You might be wondering to yourself what that actually means. And all it really measures and tells you is how strong the wind speed of the storm is. Normally, up until usually high 30s to around 74 miles per hour is considered a tropical storm. Once you get above 74, then it's the category 1 hurricane, and the scale keeps continuing usually until around higher than 157 miles per hour, which is considered a category 5 hurricane. You obviously don't have to get up to a category 5 before you see significant damage in terms of both casualties and structural issues. Those can happen from tropical storms all the way up. However, obviously, the stronger the storm, the stronger the wind speed, the more damage you tend to see. When you compare hurricanes with some of the other natural disasters we experience in the United States, like tornadoes or wildfires, you're actually in a better position in terms of preparedness because you usually know ahead of time when they'll be approaching. You'll have some sort of idea of how close they're going to be to where you live. And ideally, you will have time to get the supplies and resources you need ahead of time to prepare for when the storm is actually arriving. But despite having time to prepare yourself before the storm ends up reaching you, oftentimes a lot of people actually don't prepare. And so I'm going to talk first about some of the advice we have in the preparation phase of hurricanes. One of the most important considerations to have regarding hurricane preparedness is deciding whether you're going to shelter in place or whether you're going to evacuate. Now, this is something that is obviously very personal to the individual and what you and your family decide to do for your own safety. However, people oftentimes do stay behind during weaker storms, or they like to evacuate to not worry about any kind of unforeseen circumstances. And of course, a lot of this is going to be determined by where you live and how close to the ocean or large bodies of water that you are. And so of course it's going to be very important for you to know where the local evacuation zones you have are, where you can reach inland to be safe from rising ocean levels, and where you can go to for even further evacuation depending on how severe the storm is. Another important preparation step is building out your supply kit. Now, we've done other videos in the past of what to include in different kind of emergency kits, but obviously you want to have enough food and water to cover yourself for a few days, assuming that when the storm comes, you want to actually be able to reach out and get resources from stores, restaurants, or other family members. Obviously, in this kit, you're going to want to make sure you have enough medicine if you need anything during that time period, and you also want to make sure you have enough personal hygiene products as well. Home preparation is one of the best things that you can do ahead of a hurricane arriving. Whether you stay or you evacuate, your home is going to be there, and so making sure your home is protected is very important before these storms get to you. One of the big risks of hurricane is how strong the winds are and how easy it is to pick up objects that are laying around outside, such as outdoor furniture or other items like that. And as soon as these things become airborne, they could be essentially thought of as projectiles that could harm both individuals and your structure or other structures around you. In addition to having objects flying around, you also have a lot of rain that usually falls, and depending on how close you are to the coast, you'll also have flood surges that may end up coming near or into your home. Some of the ways that people prepare for these kind of scenarios is by boarding up windows to help protect against any kind of projectiles coming through. Sandbags are usually very common to put around doors and other kind of external surfaces that could have water seep through. Obviously, you want to bring in any kind of outdoor furniture you have, and a lot of times this is very difficult to do because you might not have a lot of space inside of your home for this outdoor furniture. What some people end up resorting to is actually flooding their furniture inside of their pool, because the body of water in the pool isn't really going to go anywhere, and so it's actually safer inside under the water than it would be outside. We can make a whole separate video on different things you can do to prepare your home for a hurricane, and I'm sure there's many out there already, but just know that this is one of the most crucial steps regardless of whether you decide to stay or whether you evacuate. Another really important thing that you can do to help prepare for hurricanes is to communicate your plans with your family or other friends or loved ones so that they know what steps you're going to be taking, where you're going to be in case of emergency, or just generally have other people have an idea of where you are if they need to reach you and they can't hear from you. Another really important aspect of preparing your home for hurricanes is making sure that you have protection in case of any kind of damages. And usually what this means is essentially having some kind of home insurance or flood insurance policy. Now, I'm not an insurance broker or a financial advisor, so I'm not trying to give you advice. I'm just practically speaking of the experiences that I've seen while living in Florida for people who have had flood insurance, people who haven't. Around this time last year, 2 major hurricanes went through Florida and some of the other southern states. And if you've seen the photos or videos that have come out of it, there was thousands of homes that were rendered inhabitable from the floodwaters and rainwaters of the storm itself. Obviously, having insurance can help protect against damages to your property, such as what happened last year. One great resource you can use to help prepare for hurricanes and other kind of natural disasters is the Ready Plan app. This is an app that we developed that can help you create contingency plans for hurricanes, other natural disasters, and can help you share these plans with your friends, your loved ones, or anyone else who you want to share these plans with. This app is free to download and is available in both Apple's App Store and the Google Play Store. And so now that we touched on some of the aspects of preparing for hurricanes, let's talk about some of what you might experience during a hurricane. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's never really a surprise when a hurricane is approaching your home. You've usually probably heard about it for a week or two leading up to the actual hurricane arriving, and I'm sure you'll be hearing it all over both local and national news depending on how severe the storm is. And that being said, as the storm starts approaching, you'll probably experience what you've experienced in other storms where it's usually pretty calm or quiet, or you'll start seeing some light rain as the storm approaches. It's important to not be deceived by some of the early indications of what the storm will be like. Obviously, seeing light rain and light wind is not indicative of what the actual hurricane is going to be. So you want to make sure that you're protected. You want to make sure that you're in your home or in a shelter or somewhere indoors. Once the storm starts, usually it could take anywhere from 1 to 2 days for it to fully pass through. The most severe aspect of the storm, where the eye is and where it's centered, usually goes through much quicker, but you'll have some tail winds and tail rain and flooding that may occur usually a day or two, both before and after the actual storm. Usually the part of the storm that causes the most damage to both people and to structures is the storm surge and the wind. Like we mentioned earlier, the closer you are to large bodies of water, the higher the risk of storm surge could be. Obviously, if you have only a few foot of flooding, then that can flood major regions on the coastal areas of Florida and other southern states. And even if you don't live near large bodies of water, there's a lot of rain that comes with these hurricanes, and oftentimes the rain alone can develop flooding of its own. The wind speed is one of the most dangerous portions of a hurricane as well. The whole category system is based off of wind speed itself. And like we mentioned in the beginning, objects can be thrown around and act like projectiles during the storms, and they don't have to be small objects like chairs or other things like that. You've seen videos, I'm sure, of roofs flying off of structures and acting like sails because of how strong the wind is behind it. And because of how strong these winds are and how easy it is for objects to be thrown around like projectiles, it's going to be really important to stay away from windows during these storms, because obviously those are the easiest to break when compared to the house itself. Growing up, my family usually stayed in an internal room during the storms to make sure that we don't risk obviously being near windows that could break during the hurricanes or during objects being thrown around. There's a very high chance that if a hurricane is passing relatively close to where you live, you're probably going to lose power during the storm or before or after. This could be for various reasons. The power lines might have gotten destroyed during the storm. They might have been shut off by the utility company to protect against other unforeseen circumstances. But regardless, you're going to want to have a plan for how to deal with being in your home with no power. Make sure you have food, again, water, and you have the means to not go crazy in a home for a few days if you do lose power. When I was growing up, Monopoly was our game of choice that we used to play during the storm, so having some kind of non-digital form of entertainment for your families could actually serve you really well during the storm itself. Just like with the preparation stage of a hurricane, we can make entire videos dedicated to the different things that could happen during the storm itself and what to do during the storm. And if you want me to make some more of those videos, please say so in the comments below. There's still a number of dangers that can happen after the storm passes, so it's important to stay safe even afterwards and protect yourselves for those circumstances. For example, depending on how much flooding you experienced or your area experienced during the storm, you might have contaminated water, or you could have downed electrical wires that are still active in bodies of water and risk electrocution. Depending on if you evacuated or not, let's say you did evacuate, you might have issues in your local area that you might not be ready to return to right away, or the roads might be closed and even inaccessible to reach those areas. So make sure that you are in contact with your emergency services departments in your local area to understand when different parts of the city are going to be back online. And like we mentioned many times, these storms are very dangerous, not just to people, but also to property. And depending on the damages that you experienced during the storm, you could be out millions of dollars if you had that beachfront property that got flooded and is now uninhabitable. Making sure you document all the issues you ran into and submitting those to your home insurance or flood insurance provider, if you have it, is going to be really important to making sure that you're covered to fix whatever issues you ran into. One of the major downsides with hurricanes and similarly with tornadoes is just because one came through, it doesn't mean another one won't be coming maybe a few days, weeks, or months later. This is actually what happened in Florida last year. They had one devastating hurricane come through, and then a couple weeks later, a second one came by and caused even more damages. So really making sure your home is okay, documenting issues, and fixing those as quick as possible is really important to making sure your home is ready for any kind of future storms that may approach. Now, fortunately, depending on where you live, a lot of local jurisdictions are mandating different kinds of building structures and regulations around how houses are being constructed to help protect against storms. The 1950s wood house with stucco around it usually doesn't do too well with hurricanes. However, cement-built houses or having the first story being surge-proof and being cement-built usually end up doing a lot better when dealing with damages related to hurricanes. And like the other parts of this video, we can make a whole dedicated video to the after the hurricane event. And if you want to see something like that, please let us know in the comments below. I hope I didn't dissuade you from visiting or moving to Florida, especially during this hurricane season, because just like anything else, it might sound really bad. And of course, there is devastation every year, but if you're prepared and you're ready for the storms, they may not be as bad as it seems. Unless you lived in Florida, you probably never heard of a hurricane party, but hurricane parties are something that people often do, especially people who live in buildings that are usually more secured. They'll end up going to their neighbors' homes during a hurricane, having a party, eating, hanging out, or whatever. Now, obviously, I don't condone this, but it just is an example of how preparedness and depending on where you live can significantly impact what the storms and the damage related to the storms can do to you and your family. Before we end the video, I just wanted to quickly talk about some common misconceptions relating to hurricanes, just so we cover a few of these topics, and then we can expand upon them later on if you want to hear more. Again, the category of a storm doesn't tell you all you need to know about it. For example, a Category 5 hurricane hitting somewhere in Florida that might be prepared for it is a lot different than a Category 2 or 3 storm hitting North Carolina like we saw last year, where the communities aren't as ready and aren't as built out for the hurricanes themselves. Another common misconception is that tropical storms aren't that big of a deal. And again, just like I mentioned before, depending on where you live, a tropical storm could actually cause a significant amount of damage. And so make sure that you're prepared for any kind of high wind, high rain, high flood warning type of storm. And lastly, a lot of people tend to evacuate inland. We did this a lot growing up. And it's usually safer from dealing with the storm surges than when you're at the coastline. But of course, if you are going inland, you should know rain is still a significant event during hurricanes. It can still cause flooding. So just make sure you're prepared for that. Thank you for sticking around through this video. If you like the content, please hit the like and subscribe button so you can get more videos like this. And again, please leave a comment below for any other topics you want to hear about. If you live through hurricanes and you have other advice, please let us know what I didn't touch on. Obviously, there's a whole plethora of information relating to hurricanes, and there's many videos that we can make on the topic. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all next time.